Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Healing Words podcast. My guest today is Briaina Latrice. Briaina is a TEDx speaker, a certified affair recovery coach, and founder of Life After Infidelity. She has a background in rehabilitation counseling and over 15 years of coaching experience, and she specializes in guiding women through the maze of healing after betrayal. She's a podcast and an upcoming book, and they offer insight into reclaiming self worth and navigating post infidelity challenges. Thank you for joining me today, Brianna.
Hello, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, it's a painful, shocking subject, but let's start at
Mhm.
the beginning. What inspired you
Okay,
to specialize in affair recovery coaching, and
okay,
do you have any personal background in this?
okay. Yes. So what inspired me, I think it was COVID. So 2021, I think it was 2021. I made a post about being divorced, right? I got divorced in 2018, left my ex-husband for good in 2020. But the first time I actually shared my story to the world, social media, was 2021. And when I shared my story at the time, I only had 70 or 75 followers on Instagram. And in 30 minutes, it had been viewed over 1,500 times.
Wow.
And when I went on there, I saw people commenting, asking me questions about like, how did you overcome it and all of this stuff. And it was funny because some of the people that were in my inboxes were my friends. And if you go to their social media pages, it looks like their marriages are blissful, but they were in my
Mm,
inbox talking about, oh, how do you XYZ. And so it just really just kind of started from there because I shared my story and I was like, huh, it is something here. I am not the only one who has experienced infidelity in their marriage, but I am the one who has enough courage to talk about it. And so really that's kind of how it started to birth Life After Infidelity.
okay. Are you sensing, and did you sense then that women in particular have a lot of shame around
Mhm.
infidelity? And what is that
Yeah.
coming from?
I think it's a lot of reasons. I think before I started doing this work, I thought it was racially related. Like I thought like, in African American households, like it was just something that we didn't talk about, right? We would attach a lot of shame to it. And then when you would connect the religious piece to it, right? It's like stand by your man no matter what. And so, but then I started to learn that even in other races, women have been felt like they've been treated the same way and they have a lot of shame attached to that. And even within their churches have told them, because one of the things that I talk about is like one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to leave my marriage was because the church was always like, oh, well, you need to go and pray about it. You need to make sure you're not a nagging wife. Like they would use all of these scriptures. And it was interesting because when I would go and seek guidance, they never led from a space of, well, how is his behavior making you feel? It was
Wow.
always from the lens of, well, what are you doing as a wife that's causing him to stray away? And I think just when we have a lot of that shame connected to that, right? Because it's like, well, what's in it in us that can't allow, we can't keep our man's attention and things like that. And then just from the lens of like Black women, right? We always hear all of these statistics that talk about Black women being like the least valued, the
Desirable.
least sought after. And so a lot of that too is I have like, and I've had a lot of women tell me this, I'd rather have somebody than to be alone. So it's a very complex reason why I think women just don't even talk about it.
Okay. Let's go back in and talk about, well, I want to back up for a second. In your work, you're you're approaching it a certain way. You're
Mhm.
allowing the woman to make the decision. You're not
Mhm.
telling her to
Yeah.
leave. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a friend today and I was like, one thing that my divorce has taught me is to never judge a person.
Mm.
Because I was one of those people too. If a man cheat on me, oh, I'm gone. Ain't no taking him back. And then what happened? My ex cheated on me, and he cheated on me not once, not twice, not two. He cheated on me for 5 years straight, and I knew it. And I still stayed in my marriage. And all the time, like I remember one time I made a post that went pretty viral, and I was like, you are not wrong for staying if your partner cheats on you. And there was just so many comments about me talking about how I was misleading people by saying that. But I think that, I try to look at things holistically and contextually to just understand that there's not, how people say once a cheater, always a cheater. I don't agree with that sentiment. Like that's not true. I've seen people who have experienced infidelity and now their marriages are flourishing. And so when I help the women, I do one of two things. If they are wanting to stay with their partner, then I walk alongside them to help determine if their partner is someone who is a good candidate to redevelop trust with. And so I kind of walk them through what that looks like, the things to look like. So there are 5 key points too that I use to determine if a partner is a good candidate to rebuild trust with. And the first one is accountability. I actually have someone now just today. Someone was saying, hey, I want to refer my friend to you because her husband was basically like, oh, I cheated on you because I knew you were going to divorce me. And I needed to have a one up so that you wouldn't leave. And I knew that if I cheated on you. So, like it's not in any accountability. So
Right.
looking to see if they're accountable to their actions. And then the second part to that is understanding. Are they truly understanding how the betrayal made you feel, right? Again, not putting it back on you as to, hey, this is why I cheated and all of this stuff. And then this is the one where a lot of women get choked up in is ability. Because a lot of times we're staying with people who don't have the ability to be the partner that we want them to be. Right. And so we have to look at that. Okay, yeah, this is what you want from him. But the reality is that does he have the capacity to give you that? And that it right there is where a lot of women get stuck.
And I'm going to add, because it is my opinion that ability and willingness
Mm-hmm.
are going to get the same response to me. If you're not able, but if you're able and still choose not to,
Mm-hmm.
they're deal breakers for me.
Yeah.
Um, right. And another thing, because do you think the women get caught up in potential,
Mm-hmm.
or they
Yeah.
think about in the beginning days of their relationship, that high they were on, and they want to get back there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's actually one of the key things too, is a lot of women get stuck in the what was. And so it's hard for them to now move past and look at reality and be present. This is what it is right now. Yeah, he might have been sweet. Yeah, he might have been loving. Yeah, he might have been attentive. But the reality is that what is he showing you right now, which actually goes into that fourth step, which is character. So, what does this person's character say about them? Because, like you said, yes, they have ability, but then are they willing? Is their character allowing them to be willing? Is their character allowing them to be, honest moving forward and open in communication with you? And a lot of times they don't. But yeah, to answer your question, we get stuck in that what was, right? And so it's so hard to move on. And another one is that you'll hear a lot of women say, oh, well, I just need closure. I don't feel like I have closure. And so I always tell people, well, what is closure? We define closure, right? And also
Yes.
the reality is if he's still cheating on you, or if he's not giving you what you need to say, to feel confident and at peace in this relationship, well, then you kind of got the closure that you need, because his actions will show that. And so we get so caught up in what something should look like. And it's like we are the designers of our own life. And so we decide what closure looks like for us.
Wow. I want to back up a bit to the response you get in households of faith. The God hates divorce. Is that
Hmm.
prevalent in households of faith? And what kind of impact does that have on a woman who's already hurting?
Hmm. So you'll find that a lot of women, when they come out of like a severely toxic relationship, you'll notice that a lot of those women have turned away from the faith.
Mm,
And one of the reasons that they have done it, and myself included. So when I went through what I went through, I had also, when I first got married, uh 3 months after that, I had experienced a church hurt. So I had two different things happening at the same time, right? Because then I went into the infidelity piece to that. And so I was just hurt from church hurt and from my relationship. But it was also too, I was seeking this guidance of, hey, this is what my current husband at the time was doing, and it was always centered on me as and they never gave any accountability or responsibility to my partner and what his actions were and why he was doing that. And so I actually left the church. I left the church for 7 years. I did not step back foot into a church until 2020 during COVID. um but I always say now, if you are a person of faith and someone is coming to you with, and it doesn't even have to be infidelity, but just anything. Yes, we want to use scriptures, right, to support the advice that we're giving, but we need to be able to look at what this person is telling us and actually looking at it holistically and seeing how it is impacting them, right? Because it's so funny. Like I've had people come on my podcast and say, "Oh, well, I don't believe in divorce," and then I'll have to correct them. Well, neither did I, but this is my story, right? This is my lot. And when I was going through what I was going through, it was affecting me literally physically, where I was having hair loss and I got down to a size zero, losing weight. And so I always say now, if you don't know how to guide those conversations when people are coming to you and you're in the church, you need to refer them out to a professional, because what's happening is that people are staying in emotionally, physically abusive relationships, all behind the stance of church and the way that the scripture is being applied to the person that's giving that advice. And it's not really sound advice, because I was on a podcast and I love how she says it. She was like, God hates divorce, but he loves you more. And
yes.
God would never want you to struggle. God would never want you to hurt as your child. God would never want you to do those things, to experience those things. And so we have to look at it from that. Yes, God hates divorce, but guess what? If your partner is not showing the why can't I think right now? And I was like, this is what leads me now when I move forward. Um,
The care and the honor.
the care and the honor, but I was the fruits of the spirit. Like if they don't have the fruits of the spirit, is that present? How do they love you? The Bible says, love your wife, honor your husband. Like we have to look at all of those things that it says that we should do in a marriage. And if your partner is not honoring those things, then I think you do have grounds to safely say, hey, it's time for me to move forward.
What kind of things are you hearing in your podcast? What's the name of your podcast, by the way?
Oh, yes. So my podcast is called Life After Infidelity.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And are all the people that you interview, talk about they're in the midst of this struggle?
Mm-hmm. No, not necessarily. So I have people who are in the middle of it. I have people who have overcome it. And then I also have professionals that kind of come in and give tips and tools on how to navigate different things that you may be experiencing as you're overcoming and healing from infidelity.
Okay. Okay. And you're also working on your second book. I love the
I
title.
am.
where healing wants you to be. To me, that is so profound. It sounds so positive because it sounds like you can get healed. This is where
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
healing wants you to be. I want to talk about the title and then tell me about the process of writing your book, what a reader is going to gain
Yeah.
from it.
Okay. So the my first book that I wrote is Healing the Heart from Infidelity, and it's a devotional. And so it's a 49-day devotional. And every day has a scripture or a motivational um inspirational top, speech or whatever that you can go off of, and then the next day it has a reflection. And so what happened was I wrote the devotional because I was like, this is what I needed when I was going through what I was going through. And so I thought about that, because now that I have returned back to the faith, and I still see that there is a bit of a disconnect for people who are experiencing infidelity, that are also in the church. I said, man, what did Brianna need 5 years ago when she was going through what she was going through? And so that's literally how I came up with the devotional. I literally would just go through all of the scriptures that I would journal on that would help me get through the day during that time. So I pulled out all my journals and just looked through all of those scriptures and wrote out like how I was feeling and what I needed, how those scriptures helped me. And then, people have always said when they hear my full story, they're like, girl, you got a story to tell. And so that is what Right Where Healing wants you to be is. It's my story, but it's not told in an autobiography type of way. It's the way I have done it is that each title is named after a character, and each character is going through something in their life. Essentially, though, is something that I went through in my life, like meeting my dad for the first time after my divorce. And so I have a podcast episode called I Married My Father, because even though I never grew up with my father and I did not know my father, once I met my father post divorce, he was the spitting image of my ex husband, from his looks to the way that he treats his partner. And
Wow.
so, mm-hmm. And
That
so
had to be
each
very insightful.
Oh, it was, and that was another layer of healing for me that I didn't know I needed. And so that's where the title comes from, right where healing wants you to be. It's saying that, you know, we always healing is cyclical, right? Like it's not linear like people
Right.
think. It's cyclical. And so you go through one situation, right? And you get out of that. Okay, well, great. And so now you're going into another situation that you need to heal through. And so what I want the readers to learn through what Right Where Healing wants you to be, what I want them to learn is that even though you might seem like you're dealing with problem after problem, just be patient and trust the process, because wherever you are in your journey, that is something that needs to be healed. And that is where healing wants you to be so that you can
Right.
get to the next level of your purpose and the next level of your greatness, and the next level of your clarity. Because I didn't even know that I needed that from my daddy to meet my dad for the first time. And it gave me so much closure.
And I would say that closure, part of that had to be thinking that, hey, isn't all me.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember when I was in counseling and I was sitting in front of my therapist and I said something about, what was going on in my life. And I thought it was, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, and she stopped me. She said, it's no surprise to me that this has happened to you. I couldn't see
Mm.
that because I was
Yeah.
thinking there was some lack or fault in me that led me to this place. Her
Hmm.
words allowed me to see that whether it had been me, you, anyone else, they probably would have ended in the same place as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there was some
And it's so
freedom
insightful.
because of it. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to back up and talk about your work background. You've been a rehabilitation therapist for about 15 years. Tell us what you do there
Hmm.
and how does that skill set help you in in this side of your work?
Yeah. So I have a background in rehabilitation counseling. And what I do is I'm still in a 9 to 5. I work with individuals who have disabilities. And so there's a counseling component in that as well, where, we're helping the students figure out what services that they need to help them get to their ultimate goal. And so that's really how this plays into it, is that it's a counseling background. So it kind of helps me learn how to navigate these conversations, how to pull out from my clients what it is that they're not really saying, how to understand, body language and all of that. But I will say though, um, starting to do this work, I'm actually now back in school to get my licensed professional counseling license, because I have had to refer a lot of my clients to therapists just because, it's not you really a lot of coaches kind of get wrapped up in trying to handle like the trauma of things, and that is something that a licensed professional therapist should be doing, not life coaches. And so I wanted to handle my business with integrity, and so I'm actually back in school now to get my licensed professional counseling degree. But even though I have a rehab counseling background, um I don't have the approval, within my state to do the
Exactly.
therapeutic process of it, which is
Exactly.
why I'm going back to school. But yeah,
And you do not want to harm someone. And you're right.
exactly.
On these internet streets, we have so many life coaches who are crossing that line and don't
Mm-hmm.
understand the harm that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Oh,
I even specifically put it on my website. I was like, what a coach is and what a coach is not. And a coach is not a therapist. And so I actually now I have a lot of clients who are coupled with a therapist. And so we kind of, work together, and things like that, which is great as well. So yeah, I don't do any therapy right now. Don't worry though, it's coming.
but you will.
I will.
On your website, you mention the curse of singleness, and you make it clear
Mhm.
that singleness is not a waiting room. I want to talk about that because I'm wondering
Yeah.
if, of course, the desire to not be alone. Like you said, one of the people you interviewed said, I gotta have somebody. Let's talk about this
Mm-hmm.
curse of singleness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, right now, we are the most connected society, but yet the most alone. And there's research on it, and there's different type of articles that talks about this population. We are the most alone, and that's just so interesting to me. Like, how can we be so connected yet feel so alone? And so, they talk about it too with the dating websites and how that kind of makes people feel. But yeah, so the number, I kid you not, every time somebody comes to me, their number one concern is, well, I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. And I'm like, girl, like the ink ain't even wet on the divorce papers, and you worried about being in another
The rest
relationship?
of your life.
Like chill out. And I don't say it that way, but it's just funny to me that every woman literally feels the same way. They're like, I just don't want to be single for the rest of my life. And like you said, whether it doesn't matter who your experience happened with, you were going to land right there. And that is my job. My job is to get the clients to see what role they played in their experience with their partners. Because
Hmm.
believe it or not, a lot of women too have experienced infidelity before. It could have been in just a previous relationship and not a marriage, right? And so what is it in you that keeps attracting this caliber of person? And
Hmm.
so my thing about singleness is not a curse, is that you have to learn how to love yourself and everything that comes with you. So learning just the joy of what it is that you enjoy to, like the things that you enjoy to do. I always tell people that my job for you is to get you to love yourself so much that now anytime somebody comes in, it's just a compliment to what you already do to yourself.
Right.
So if a man brings you flowers, it's just a compliment because you already pick yourself flowers up when you feel like you want
Right.
them. If a man tells you that you're beautiful, it's a compliment because you tell yourself you're beautiful every day. If a man shows up for you, it's a compliment because you already show up for yourself every day.
Exactly.
And so, when I talk about singleness, it's not a curse. There is a beauty in just rediscovering and being present and being okay with where you are right now. Again, right where healing wants you to be. And if
Mm.
healing wants you to be single, then right now, what are the things that you need to learn? Because every part of our life is a lesson that we need to learn. And I think that whenever we're so hyper focused on the what's next, we miss that lesson, we miss that presence, we miss that joy, we miss the ability to just have gratitude right then and there. And so singleness is not a curse, it's actually a blessing. And when I say singleness, I'm not saying like, hey, be proud of being single and like you're going to be single forever, but it's saying rediscovering yourself. There's a beauty in that then allows you to actually connect and attract whatever it is that you want in your next partner.
Think you make a good point because the pendulum does swing the other way. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
need no man. I'm this, I'm that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm this hyper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's okay
Mm-hmm.
to actually say I am single now and enjoying it, but at some
Mm-hmm.
point I would like to
Mm-hmm.
not be single.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we like, and I love the story, right? About how Ruth met Boaz. If you are busy in your work, right? If you're busy in your purpose, if you're busy in your calling, or just busy doing the things that you enjoy, going skating or doing this or doing that, like you will organically and naturally attract someone. But a lot of times too, when we're so hyper focused on trying to find that right person, we end up finding the wrong person. But it's like just allow yourself to let things happen naturally. And, one of my favorite scriptures, the Lord rewards those who diligently seek him. And so, like, if you're just diligent in your actions, diligent in your behavior, and like you said, it's not saying I don't need no man. No, you want a man, and that's fine to say. But you can say, hey, right now I'm single and I am hoping that as I am living my life, the person that I desire will find me as I am living, and I'm not, you know, making a point to deter like my life choices to actually find somebody, but that person will fall in line with me. Like someone asked me the other day, they were like, well, how can I find my person? I said, well, just live. I
Yeah.
was like, you like skating. I was like, look up some skating clubs in your area. I'm in Dallas and they have a Dallas Run Club and they're always posting how couples have connected just coming out there
Yes.
and running. And so I just told her, I said, find things that you enjoy doing, and then he's gonna show up. Like, because you're busy in yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. So my next question is, I'm wondering if we sometimes have difficulty with the boundaries in romantic relationships is that we don't set them in our friendships, and we have all kind of friends in our lives who are not actually friends. So sometimes we put up with bad behavior, and so then when this person comes along and they're treating you the way you allow these friends to treat you, that seems normal to you when you add that on top of the fact that you just don't want to be by yourself. I want to talk
Mhm.
about the importance of having boundaries in our friendships as well as in our romantic partners.
Mhm. So I would actually say you need to have boundaries with yourself first. Um, and one of the things that I always tell my clients is that we allow others to treat us one step lower than we treat ourselves. And so, if you are allowing your friends to treat you that way, and now you're allowing your partner to treat you that way, a lot of the
Mm,
times you have to look at how you're treating yourself. And so, an example is like, think about how many times you said, hey, I'm going to make a promise to myself. I'm not going to do XYZ, and then you end up breaking that promise to yourself. What you don't realize though is subconsciously your mind is now conditioning, okay, I can't trust a word that Brianna says
You don't
because
trust
she's doing
yourself.
this. Yeah, don't trust yourself. So what has happened now is that all of these things that you have done, it's showing, like, you may not realize it, but it's showing up, and it's showing up in your friendships, in your relationships. And so you're allowing these different behaviors. And so I would say, first, look at the boundaries for yourself. Also, look at your self talk. Because if you're allowing people to treat you this way and say crazy things to you, I'm pretty sure you're saying those
Saying
things
it
to
to
yourself
yourself.
in your head, you know. And so a lot of times it's really has to do with the person and how they're showing up for themselves that, allows that. But I will say, if we are talking about boundaries specifically, and sometimes setting boundaries is a very hard conversation. Like, it's hard to tell somebody, I don't like the way you talk to me, like, or I'm not going to allow you to have this type of, I found that a lot of people have just been fearful, because the thing is, too, a lot of women who experience infidelity, you'll find that some of their core wounds are fear of rejection and fear of abandonment. So anytime that they now have to go to somebody and say, hey, I don't like XYZ, it's very difficult for them to do because they have that core wound of abandonment or rejection. And your responsibility is not on how that person responds. Your responsibility is on honoring yourself and saying, hey, I don't like when you talk to me this way. And so if you do talk to me this way, here is how I'm going to respond. A lot of people get boundaries confused with control. And it's
Right.
not to control the other person, it's simply to say, this is how I want to be treated. And when you do not treat me this way, here is how I'm choosing to respond.
Right.
And what you're now doing is you're allowing that
Them
person
to make
to now to make the decision, right? And here's the thing, you do it sooner rather than later. Even in dating, that's what I tell my clients. If you see a red flag, you need to address that red flag sooner rather than later. And here's why. You want to address it sooner because you want to see how they're going to respond to you saying that this is a non negotiable. And how they respond is going to let you know if this is someone that you should continue to pursue, or if this is someone that you can go ahead and lay by the wayside because of how they respond to, your
right.
boundary settings. And so, yeah.
I have always, when it comes to the difference between control and boundaries, I have always explained that control is a wall and boundary
Mm-hmm.
is a gate.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, in our fear of being hurt, we put up the wall. And yes, that keeps the people out who are going to hurt us, but it also keeps the people out who are going to love us.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Yeah.
gate swings both ways. That boundary,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, is saying this is a non-negotiable for me, boo. So what you gonna
Mm-hmm.
do? And then if you
Mm-hmm.
they continue, then you have to close that gate. Others can
Mm-hmm.
come in that gate, but this
Mm-hmm.
person cannot come in that gate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not even saying, hey, don't yell at me, right? You have the
Mhm,
choice to yell at me, but
mhm.
just know, when you choose to yell at me, here's how I'm going to respond. So again, I'm not controlling. I'm not telling you what you can or cannot do. I'm just telling you what I'm available for. And
Exactly.
that's how I think you should, you term it. And again, what I've learned too is like, one of my good friends, who's a betrayal trauma coach, she always talks about it in terms of I, because she said a lot of times when we're talking to people and we're saying, well, when you do this and you do this and you do this, it makes that person defensive. But when you say, hey, I don't like to be yelled at, it really makes me feel, very disconnected from you, and so I am going to choose to just go into the other room because I'm feeling disconnected. And then, like, when you calm down, you can come back. So it's like leading with
Exactly.
that I to say, this is how I am feeling about this, versus trying to make it seem like they, like it's all on them too. And I think we have to be careful with our wording when we're setting those boundaries too.
Tell us about your TEDx talk.
Yeah, so I did a TEDx talk, and the thing is, I love how God works, because my TEDx talk was actually over imposter syndrome. And so, yeah, so when I first started my business, I was actually doing imposter syndrome. And then what happened, life, yeah, I started to learn more about business acumen and things like that. And then, like I told you, I shared my story on Instagram. And then I had one of my coaches at the time, my business coaches, and I was like, hey, I'm really thinking about getting away from imposter syndrome into life after, into infidelity. And I can't remember the question that she asked me, but she asked me a question, I answered it, and she was like, baby, it sounds like you have your answer. And so I share that to just say my TEDx talk was about imposter syndrome, because, even for Black women, we deal a lot with imposter syndrome, right? We have to wear different masks for when we're at work, how we show up at the household and our family. And sometimes some of us are always trying to be that strong friend. And so that's really what that was about, how to handle imposter syndrome and stop wearing these different masks and show up as your most authentic self and be confident and proud, because the rooms that you are in, you deserve to be in those rooms.
Or you wouldn't be there.
You wouldn't be there. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's all imposter syndrome is. Imposter syndrome is feeling like you're a fake, like, you've been here on a fluke. And I'm one of my worst critics of myself, right? And I look at all of the accolades that I have, but I always feel like, oh, I think maybe the person they wanted to select didn't choose, And so, we always do these things like this self-talk to ourselves, but you deserve to be wherever you are and in the rooms that you are. It is not a fluke. You are worth it. You are valuable. Like, so own that, because you are enough.
I want to move gently into another situation. I want to talk about, because they're out there, the predatory side of relationships. Men, we're talking men because you work with women, but it happens on the other side too, where they know that they've got issues. They have no desire to change. They want someone that they can subjugate. Um, have you seen that? Have you seen that in any of your clients? What would be red flags? And how
Mhm.
prevalent is that actually?
You know, Unfortunately, it is more prevalent than you can imagine. Most of my clients have actually, experienced some type of manipulation in their relationships with their partners. And so I would say one of the first red flags is accountability. So a lot of times, if you bring this situation to your partner and you say, hey, I know that you're cheating, blah, 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 if their first response is the reason why they're doing what they're doing, if they blame it on you, that's a red flag. Because what that's saying is that they are not taking ownership for their choices. Yeah, you might have done something that allowed them to step out, that made them want to step out. But guess what? At the end of the day, they still had a choice.
Choice.
They had a choice to communicate with you where they felt like you were lacking in the marriage. They had a choice to communicate with you how they were feeling. And so I would say it's that I won't even go anywhere else. I would start there, because a lot of partners do not hold themselves accountable for their actions, right? Also, I will say this though. You can look at the connection. A lot of the times when connection leaves, commitment is usually the next thing to follow. And
Okay,
so
let's
if
talk about
you
that.
know,
Connection.
mhm, hmm So, if you like, a lot of people will always say, yeah, things had just been real off for a while, or we weren't talking as much, and we were arguing more, and we weren't just vibing the way you like the connection, like the thing that brought y'all together, the way that y'all worked well together. And so when that connection is off, then usually that commitment follows as well. So I say to just kind of gauge the connection, and connection in several different ways. One of the key indicators is a phone. How's a person handling their phone? Are they always on the phone? Are they always having to go out and do things with the boys or work late? Because unfortunately, that's still an excuse. I'm working late. But yeah, so I would just say accountability. How is this person showing up in the relationship when you are saying that you're wanting to work on things? And then, again, character to me is a really big one. Are they trustworthy? Do they keep their word? So, if you guys are talking about, hey, this is what I need to move forward in the relationship, and they'll say, a lot of times partners will just say things to keep you quiet and to keep you talking. And what you'll learn too is not a lot, men who do not have the ability to be a desirable partner, they have a threshold. So, like for me, my ex-husband's threshold was 3 months. And so some people will say typically around 3 months is where they'll see. So you'll see where your partner will say, oh, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. I promise. I promise. And they can actually do better for that 3 month threshold. And
Mm.
then they revert back into who they are. And so if you have noticed that your partner has a threshold and they end up reverting back into who they are, well, what that tells you is that that's their character, right? And because that's their character, they don't have the ability to be who you want them to be in this relationship. And so you have to look for those things.
Do you find it hard to date knowing what you know?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, yeah, because every now and again, we're out and about or I'm having a conversation with a girlfriend and she'll say something and I'm thinking to myself, girl, mm, what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're just
Mm-hmm.
going along like this is normal. I'm thinking, what?
It's not normal. No,
Right.
it's not normal. But I will say this. That's why, we talked about earlier, it's so important to enjoy your singleness. And when you enjoy your singleness, you will start to do things that bring you joy, and you're not doing things for other people, or you're not doing things to say, oh, I'm going here so I hopefully somebody can find me, right? But as you're enjoying, then you're going to attract that like-minded person, right? And so I'll say, like, um I have met, this has been my first experience where I would say like I've actually met somebody that I'm super excited about. But I met them just doing what I love. I
Right.
was in an entrepreneurship program, and we first just kind of became friends, and then we became accountability partners. And, now we're going on dates and we're seeing where it goes. And it's
Right.
exciting because this person matches my energy. Right.
I
And
was
I
thinking
also,
energy. Yes.
yeah, and I wasn't intentionally looking for anyone. I just was doing what I loved. He was doing what he loved, and then it brought us together. And I always say that too in the dating, like that's why it's so important to just do the things that you love, because it's so hard to try to, as you're dating people like on dating apps and stuff, it's so hard to be like, well, what do you like? Well, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? But if you're busy doing the stuff that you enjoy, and if you find somebody at a run club, y'all already have one
We
connection,
have a
and y'all
connection.
can connect on that and then build off of that. Because if you're out here running, then you probably value health. And so, it's just so much easier to build on things that way.
Hmm. Excellent. So what are you working on now? What projects? I know you're working on yours, the book Where Healing Wants You to Be. Do you have a
Mhm.
publication date for that?
I do not. My goal right now, I'm actually graduating at the end of this year in December. So I'm super excited. I'm graduating at the end of December. A part of that is I'm working for this summer to bring a group out. I'm wanting to do some group counseling sessions. I actually have a counselor that's going to be overseeing that for me. And it's going to be talking about how to overcome bad breakups. And
Mm.
so that's kind of what I'm working on, because my goal is once I graduate college, I really want to go into some group counseling things, because I'm realizing that, because a lot of people are so alone. And when I'm working with people in one-to-one sessions, I'm just laughing inside because I'm like, girl, you're not the only one that's going through this. And so I
And they
think
think they
now,
are.
and they think they are, and it's so funny. And then I'll tell them, I'll be like, no, this, they'll be like, I know it seems crazy. And I'm like, no, I just heard this 30 times today. And so my next my next goal now, outside of getting the book ready, which I don't have a date for, is going into preparing group coaching for women, putting them through a 6-week program that will kind of help them heal, and so they can get a cohort of sisterhood too, to know and have that support so that they don't feel alone. I think one of the reasons that people stay stuck in a situation much longer is because of that shame, but it's because they're not aware that other people are going through those same experiences. So I think that having a sisterhood and a cohort of other women will be able to support them and encourage them along their journey as well.
So the way you help now, you do one-on-ones, but you also have a
Hmm.
cohort coming up.
Hmm.
Okay. And on your
Yeah.
website, you have free ebooks, you
Hmm.
have a
Yes.
podcast. So there's
Yes.
plenty of ways to get some help from you. Tell us where we can find you online.
Okay. Yeah. So I am actually Life After Infidelity on TikTok and Instagram if we're talking socials. You can also go to lifeafterinfidelity.net. And on there, I even have blogs. So I have blogs up that just talk about different topics that, us women might be going through. And like you mentioned, if you go on my Instagram page and go into my bio, there's a link to a lot of freebies on there. I have an overcoming infidelity ebook, which I love. It's just a really great starter ebook to help you determine, if your partner is a good candidate to rebuild trust with, or if it's time to move on. But I give you some really great tips on that. I also have a boundaries ebook on there. So just walking you through how to set boundaries. And I have some playful ways that you can share those boundary settings with the ones that you love. And if you are in a relationship and you are wanting to work through things and maybe you're not quite ready to start the coaching journey with me, I actually have a $7 ebook that is called Essential Questions to Ask Your Partner After Infidelity. And so I give you a list of 25 questions that you can discuss with your partner. And by the time you ask those questions, you will know if this is a good candidate to rebuild trust with or not. And it's some very thought provoking questions. A lot of times we ask the wrong questions, like, well, how many times did you do it? Is she better in bed than me? And things like that. But these questions are, what did the affair mean to you? What did you feel like you were missing, that made you want to go and be with somebody else? Are you glad the affair is over? And so what
Wow.
it does, it gets you to tap into the mind of what your partner was doing. Like what did it feel like when you would come home at night, And so it gets you to really understand the mindset of your partner to help you determine, hey, okay, this is something that we can work through, or if this is something that we should probably move on from. So I know I'm not supposed to go into that, but there are
It's fine.
lots of great resources on my website for sure.
Oh, no, no. Going into that is fine because I was thinking to myself, if you get a negative response to those questions, big old red flag. If they're like, why are
Mm-hmm.
you asking all these questions and why I gotta,
Mm-hmm.
they should
Mm-hmm.
want you to be comfortable. They should be
Yeah.
wanting to put you at ease.
Yes. Mm-hmm. 100%. And giving you what you need as you're going through the healing, as you're learning to retrust them, because the reality is that people think that once you forgive, that you automatically start back where you all left off. And that does not, forgiveness does not mean, reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean I'm trusting you back at level 5. What forgiveness means is that, okay, I'm choosing not to hold this offense against you anymore. But as far as trust, you're at level 1. And so you have to
Wow.
start at level 1 to rebuild and regain that trust with me. And people, I'll say, a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want you to forgive, forget, and
Start
start
all
back
over.
where it was.
Start where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Mm-hmm.
they consider that, they consider the alternative as punishing. You're
Mm-hmm.
punishing them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, excellent stuff. I'm hoping that our viewers will go to your website. I'm going to put all of that information, all of your contact information, and where to find you in the liner notes of this. But we're at the point of our talk where I ask all of our guests the same 5 questions. We're the Healing Words podcast. So I take the first letter from the word words and ask you a question. And instead of asking about your book, I'm going to ask about your mission to help
Okay.
women. W, when did you know for certain? I think you said, giving us part of it out of that TED talk. When were you absolutely certain that, you know what, this is what I need to be doing? This is what is needed.
Yeah. It was when I made that post of sharing my story, and there were so many women asking me what I did to overcome. How did I get through what I experienced? And it was at that moment where I was like, okay, I gotta do something with this because women are out here hurting and they don't know how to navigate this space. And I was like, okay, God, I think this is my calling. I hear you.
Hmm, hmm. Well, let me ask you another question. Is it naive to think that you can be married in a relationship without infidelity? Because it seems like, sometimes you're watching reels and people are making fun of infidelity. You can barely watch a television show without somebody, um, you know,
Cheating.
cheating, and that's the main storyline.
Mhm.
Yeah, now we have, like my girlfriend said, we got side chicks who, side chicks used to stay in the background, and now they're like confronting the wives. Is
Mhm.
the thought that we can have happy, healthy marriages without infidelity, is that naive?
No, I believe because again, I am a scripture girl. And one of my favorite scriptures is walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion
Mm-hmm.
of fools suffers harm. And so what
Mm-hmm.
that means is that you don't even have to be a fool to suffer harm. You just have to hang around fools. And so
Ooh.
one of the things that I always have my clients to do is to surround themselves with um people of value, people of substance, because I know that there are amazing men out there who
Mm.
value their wives, who value monogamy, who value their marriage. And because I was actually on the belief, because I was so heartbroken, I when I was first coming through, I was like, you know what, I'm never going to marry again, because all men cheat, and that was my belief. My belief was all men cheat. But then when my coach had me, she gave me the challenge to find really great men and surround myself with those great men, right? And so I have done that. And now I can say I have a brotherhood of men who are married, and I get to see how they show up and treat their women. And because I'm seeing it firsthand, I know that it is out there. And I think it's just your algorithm. What is your algorithm in your life, in your personal life? And if it is not, if what you're seeing is about infidelity and people not treating their women right, you need to change the algorithm in your personal circle, because that is something that I had to do. I had to cut off a lot of people because I knew that the trajectory in which I wanted my life to go, the people that I was hanging around wasn't going to get me there. So I would say it is definitely not naive, but it is naive for you to think that you're going to get a different result hanging around the same people.
Right.
So if you want something different, then you're going to have to make the hard choices and surround yourself around the people that have the thing that you want.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, what kind of obstacles did you have to overcome getting this off of the ground, helping people, telling them things that maybe they did not want to hear?
hmm it wasn't even so much telling them the things that they did not want to hear. I think it really just goes back to, for me, the imposter syndrome. of me feeling like, oh, well, who am I? Like, I don't have anything of substance to say. I'm just, and I would downplay a lot of my thoughts and wisdom. And then when I would let people read different things that I was writing to put into the book, they were like, man, this is so helpful. I wish that my sister would have had this when she was going through it. So for me, the biggest obstacle was myself, and the self-doubt that I was giving myself and the fear that I was having behind, like feeling like, well, are my words good enough? Am I intellectual enough? Do I have enough experience to put this out there? And comparing myself to people who have been doing this work for 30 plus years, and I'm just starting out. So I think the biggest obstacle was myself, honestly.
Okay. R is rear view. Knowing what you know now and the way
Mhm.
you've helped others and the way you have overcome and healed, what would you tell yourself on that worst day of the worst in your
Mhm.
marriage?
Mhm. Loving him harder is not going to make him change.
Girl, because that's it.
That's it. I thought that if I just continued to love him harder, like, I was just telling a friend today, because we were talking about the whole church situation, and I was like, and that was one of the things where I thought that, if I knew he was cheating on me, because he even told me, he said, I can't quit cold turkey. And my
Girl,
response
if a
was
man
like,
said that
okay,
to you now, you'd be like,
girl. But I was
I
so
can't
low
quit
back
cold turkey.
then. But I thought that was love. I thought love was, you know what? I'm going to love him through this as he wings his way out of these relationships with these other women. I'm just going to love him through it. And loving a person harder is not going to make them change.
Because that's really not love, because it's based on
Not
your
love.
fear.
Mm-hmm.
And just a side note, oh my gosh, that does nothing to, it really does embolden their bad behavior because you get that, that side thing with that whole, the kinky sex thing after their affair comes up because in your mind, you are competing with this person. And so you think, okay, well, if she is A and B, I'm going to be A, B, C, and D.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you'll never be enough. You'll never be enough for that very reason that you said,
Mhm.
because that was what I like. One particular time I was able to get into his phone and laptop, and I had screenshot those pictures that the women were sending him. And I found myself looking through the pictures and trying to recreate those poses and trying to recreate those outfits, because I was like, well, this is what he likes. And so
Right.
now I've got to try to do that. And so here I am now comparing myself to these women, because in the
Right.
reality is that I'll never be enough,
Right.
ever. And I think that would be something else that I would tell myself, and I would tell anybody going through it right now. I know you've heard it a lot, but his actions honestly have nothing to do with you. So
Right.
don't internalize his behaviors, because they're all on him. It has everything to do with him.
Mm. Okay, D is for delete. And normally what I ask is people who are writing these memoir type books about the situation that they've overcome. And when they have really, really, really gotten vulnerable, have you ever gotten to a place, we're talking about your ministry now, um,
Mhm.
where you felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe that's too personal. How do you
Mhm.
decide what to say and what not to say?
Yeah. Um, if I've overcome it, so like, if it's a story or a situation, if I'm still in the midst of it, I
Yeah.
don't I don't share it at all.
Yeah.
And then from there, if I have overcome it, then my question is, does this align with the mission that I have for my business and for my women? And is it actually going to help them? Like me sharing this, is it going to serve a purpose? And if it is, what purpose is it going to serve? And so honestly, everything just goes back to my mission. Is this going to help them develop self-love, self-care? Is it rooted in scripture, right? And so those are my three things. And so if it isn't rooted in self-love, self-care, or in scripture, or it brings them joy and happiness, then I don't share it, because that's what my mission is about.
think what you just shared was extremely powerful because there are women who probably have gone through a phone and
Mhm,
felt that and acted out of what they saw there, but that's not something they would say. That's not something they
mhm,
would admit to or say out loud. And to hear you,
mhm,
an affair recovery coach who has
mhm,
healed from that,
mhm,
say that, I am sure that says, okay, I'm on the right track,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know.
Well, even when I share my story, like I have no problem saying it now. Like my ex-husband, when I say he cheated on me for 5 years, and I knew it, I did because every 6 months, like clockwork, I would find out about another woman. And so and I can say that now. Now, I was ashamed back then, but
Right.
I can honestly say, yeah, I took my ex back every single time because I was that weak. I was that empty. I had, I did not have any self-esteem about myself, right? And so I just believed that, okay, I'm not going to find anybody else. It's better to have him than to be alone. Like I thought all those things. And so that's why I don't shame people if they choose to go back and they're trying to work out their relationship. But now I want to give you the tools to be like, hey, is this person the good, a great person to rebuild trust with? And so I think too, like a lot of people are embarrassed to say, yeah, I know my partner cheated on me, but I'm choosing to take him back. Girl, I took mine back several times and I knew he hadn't stopped. It's so, but again, that's something that now I have healed from and I've overcome. And
Right.
so I can now share it with empowerment. Of,
Excellent, excellent. And S, how has ministering to other women this way, how has that strengthened you?
ooh. Um, it strengthens me because even, when I'm going through and not infidelity, because I'm so, much further past
Beyond
that.
that. Hmm. Hmm.
But when I have self-doubt, because again, like I said, I started off in imposter syndrome. So I do have oftentimes like a lot of self-doubt and feeling like I'm not supposed to be in rooms that I am, granted into. But when I see the women that I am helping, when I've seen how they overcome, like I remember I had an event last year and my mom was like, where's that client that you met that you got from this event that I went to with you or whatever? And I was like, that's her right there. And she was like, wait, what? She doesn't even look the same. And my mama was just so shocked because she was like, she doesn't even look the same. And that's what it's about, me seeing how women are overcoming. And also, because I have chosen to come out with this work that I've done, I've had people who are so much older than me who I know personally say, hey, because I saw you go through your divorce and leave your person, my person was doing the same thing, but you gave me the courage to leave. And my mom is like, me seeing you do this work, you were giving me the courage to, do the self development in myself. Because my mom was cheated on and my grandma was cheated on. And I
Right.
remember telling my mom, the curse stops here. And so when you have a granddaughter, your granddaughter won't go through this. So all of this, that's what this work embodies me. It reminds me that everything that I'm doing right now is not only serving its purpose in helping to heal women, but it's serving its purpose in helping to heal the lineage of for my children that are coming forth. And that when my daughters come and when my sons come, they'll be able to see what real love looks like. And that it's
Exactly.
not it's not a fantasy to think that you can have a relationship without infidelity.
Wonderful. Excellent. And you are kind enough, you have an offer for one of our viewers. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so I mentioned my I'm like, I don't know if you can kind of see that, but this is
Mhm.
my 49-day devotional, Healing the Heart from Infidelity. And I forgot to mention this is on Amazon. So if you just type in Healing the Heart from Infidelity, you can get your own copy of the book. It's only $20, but I am wanting to give away a free copy to one of your listeners. So yeah, like however you decide to give it away, but it is definitely here and we will be getting that to you all. And again, It's 49 days. It's broken up into 7 weeks. So each week has its own thing that it's talking about: forgiveness, healing, trust, love. So
Mhm.
each week for 7 days, you get to talk about one topic and just go into that and some reflection pieces for each day.
Perfect. Wonderful. I tell you what we'll do. Um, to the first person who responds to the email at this YouTube channel and sends me their name, I will get their contact information and send it to you. Does that work for
Okay.
you?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
Brianna, this was such a great talk. I've enjoyed it. I'm glad our schedules finally um, synced up. I want to thank you
Yes, for
so
sure.
much.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
And for everyone who is watching, again, I'm going to put her socials down here. And so you can reach out to her. You can see her offerings, go to Amazon and get her book. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, this evening. And we'll see you next time on the Healing Words Podcast. Bye bye.